when I said everybody knows that, what I meant is most sane people should know that, but clearly lots of people in all the right places don't know this, that it's not just a case of finding yourself with a big, fluffy, impressive degree.
Well, this is an important part of a report that we've brought out today called Innovation Generation, which looks at this sort of new strategic and integrated approach that we need in this country for a much more upward social mobility. And we focus really on three things. One is an innovative economy, secondly, skills, and thirdly, regional differences, geographical differences. And university and education is one part of that. And as I said in the quote you're referring to, universities it's just too narrow now, based on outcomes. Using university pathway to elite professions is not the only route for people now. We need to offer more opportunities to more people, rather than the small number that are going to people that probably would go to university anyway.
Indeed, and I guess what seems to have happened over recent years, I mean, probably over 20 years perhaps, Tony Blair, maybe understandably in his initial idea of getting more working class people to universities, what seems to have happened now, it's not even about going for a job, what your degree is, as long as you've been educated to degree level, which is kind of another layer of kind of weirdness in a way. I understand an employer doesn't want somebody who has had no education, but the idea that that is a set in stone criteria when there could be a kid down the road who's really quite bright and has lots of other kind of applicable skills, who's left out purely because they didn't go through the process of university. Is that the sort of area that's of concern to you?
So university isn't for everybody. More than 50% of young people don't go to university, and many of those wouldn't even contemplate going. Yeah. And when you look at the disadvantaged groups, it's under 30% that would consider going or do go to university. So we're arguing that what we need to do is focus more on skills, training, further education, to help young people into skilled careers. We want to make sure that there's a much more joined up approach to how this is done, so that every young person has the right opportunities to exploit their talents. So apprenticeships is one way of doing that, and having a post-16 pathway for young people that really works for them needs to happen. Now, previously, apprenticeships, and the last government did try and make apprenticeships a bigger thing than it was, but the apprenticeship levy didn't really work because employers were really encouraged by the way the levy worked to upskill their existing staff, rather than sending them on things like management courses, rather than helping disadvantaged people get into the workplace and get the skills they needed to get on in life. So what we're saying is you need to have a much more balanced approach across education, skills and a higher education. Now, that's not to say higher education isn't a good thing. It's an excellent thing. Yeah. And the number of graduates we have and the high quality teaching that goes on in universities and the research that goes on in universities is invaluable to the country.
Do you think, Rob, that we still need at a very basic level at school? When I was at school, and that time when you're thinking about leaving school and careers, this is the 1980s, there was literally no talk. I mean, this was a very working class kind of area, and everybody was from similar backgrounds. Nobody ever talked about university. Never came up. It was never even discussed as an option, unless I had my ears closed on that day, and that's quite possible, but it never came up. And today, we know it does. I mean, I talk to a lot of the people I work with around here who will say it was never even a discussion that you wouldn't go to university. It was just a given that you would go to university. Schools now say that they do look at more vocational options, and they do encourage their students to explore that if it's better for them. I have a sneaky feeling they still prioritise university. It's probably quite good for the Ofsted report, I would imagine, whereas vocational stuff perhaps doesn't carry the same weight. But my sense, talking to educators and teachers over the years, Rob, is that there's still an imbalance on telling kids what their potential options could be.
Yeah, and we need much better career services, and the government in its white paper is going to be trying to do something about that. So that's a good thing. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that the world has changed, and we have to accept that. And education and schools have come a long way in recent years. And you have to say that, particularly in areas of London, in those inner cities, we've had an incredible performance by schools in terms of the raising of the standards, the improvements and the results. And all that's great. And more of those disadvantaged kids are getting into university, and that has to be applauded. But what we've got to remember is that, you know, nearly 1 million young people are not in education, employment and training. These are 16 to 24-year-olds, and it has a scarring effect on their life if they're not in those things for 6 months or more.
Yeah.
There are nearly 1 in 5 people that don't have any education any education qualification post 16 at all. So we have a massive skills problem in this country that we are neglecting, and that is why in this report we are so keen to get the skills route into a much higher priority.
And fair point as well. Listen, Rob, thank you for your time. Rob Wilson, Deputy Chairman of the Social Mobility Commission.